This airplane has a pretty long history that's really easy to document, so I thought I would show you this footage twice. The first time I'm going to dub over and tell you all about the airplane, and then the second time we'll roll this tape and you can see what I'm actually talking about in this little video. But I love finding out the history about an individual airframe, and this is one of them. This aircraft was constructed in 1942 in Seattle, pretty close to where it sits right now, probably in Boeing plant number 2. It was built as a Boeing B17F-70-BO, and it was taken on strength by the United States Army Air Force with a serial number of 42-29782. It was shortly converted to an RB-17F and then converted again to a TB-17F. Those mean that some serious piece of equipment on it was changed, like maybe a bomb site or engines or something that changed the airplane enough that it got a new designation. But this airplane never left the United States. It was used for training throughout the entire Second World War. It never left the States. It stayed stateside. By November of 1945, it was struck off of strength, off charge from the United States Army Air Force, and it was surplus, so to speak. It was taken to the city of Stuttgart, Arkansas, and it was placed on display as a war memorial. It sat in the town square up to 1953. And then in 1953, a fellow named Gerald Francis, he campaigned to the city to buy it, and they let him buy it for $20,000. The aircraft changed hands a couple of times, and a fellow named Max John Biegert bought it of Lincoln, Nebraska, and he modified the aircraft with 7 tanks in it and 2 tanks underneath it, and it was used for aerial crop spraying and probably bug. They did a lot of bug spraying back in those days too. There was huge government contracts for anti-mosquito spraying over like large chunks of western United States. And people had to modify these airplanes to get those contracts, and they did. So in April of 1953, 2 brothers, Max and John Biggert of Lincoln, Nebraska, came along, and they bought the aircraft for $20,000. They disassembled it, and they rebuilt it with new bolts and taper pins. They registered it as November 6015 Victor. They modified it with an L8 cargo door and began operating it. The aircraft was flown for years as a sprayer with 7 tanks internally and 2 tanks under the wings. The aircraft was leased to Central Aircraft Corporation of Yakima, Washington in 54 and 55. I think they did mosquito programs in those years. In 1960 and 61, it was leased to Abel Sellard in Stafford, Arizona, and that's where it was converted to a fire tanker in May of 1960. It now fought forest fires with Abe's Aerial Service, based in Stafford, Arizona, from 1961 to 1963. And then later it transferred to another company, Aircraft Specialties, Inc. of Mesa, Arizona, from 1963 to 1981, an aerial fire tanker. In 1968, the aircraft flew in the movie 1000 Plane Raid. In 1969, it was used for the movie Tor, Tor, Tor. The next company that used this airplane was Globe Air Inc. of Mesa, Arizona, and they had it from 1981 to 1985. It flew as a tanker number 4. So this airplane has worked its whole life. It has just flown. It's got tons of hours on it. None of my research came up with the hours on it. I really would like to know. From 1985 to 1990, the aircraft was owned by Bob Richardson of Seattle, Washington, but the airplane stayed down in Arizona and worked there until 1989. Then it came up to Washington and it got serviced and was transferred to England just to be used in a movie called Memphis Belle. It flew approximately 50 hours during that movie, and then it got flown back to Seattle, where it began a restoration by Boeing. Boeing actually looked after it from 1991 to 1998 and it flew again on May 9th of 1998, and it was now the livery was Boeing B. It had a new name, and that flew from 1998 to 2003, and then I believe it's only been a display aircraft since then. It is considered a flyable B-17, but it is considered that it would probably never fly again. This plane looks very restored. But not all of it. That outside engine cover looks pretty beat up. Still seeing a lot of new skins though. I haven't had a close look up at a B17 in quite some time. This one's mint. Mint. And there's a B29 right next to it. Those funny little things on top of the vertical stabilizer to keep the birds off it. Kind of neat. You can see how thick the wing is from here. An all metal airplane. There's no fabric on it anywhere. There's some music playing. I hope I don't get a copyright strike from YouTube for having somebody's copyright music in the background. Something that's happened to me before. Not fair. Beautiful angle from here. Wow. Oh, fabric covered elevators here. That's fabric surface. The fabric on the rudder as well. The rudder trim fab looks like it's made of steel. It's a weird little box they put over the gun sight. I haven't seen that little box before. And where this plywood is right here, that's usually kind of a canvas type sack material, burlap. Yeah, that little gun sight box, that's not supposed to be there. I saw one of these tail sections sitting at Paul Allen's museum, and I think there's a kit. I think you can build them. Should try that one day. Whoa, the B29 wing is right overlapping the horizontal stabilizer because the B29 is a little bit bigger. It's actually quite a bit bigger, and somebody polished it. Oh, you look at it from here, and it's really quite big. It spreads out. Just a big airplane to be a tail dragger. It's so rare to see. It's weird that they made it as a tail dragger. Look at the size of the tail wheel. Nice door to get in the side. I don't know what this fella's doing with the pneumatic gun. Kind of weird looking. Flying Fortress remains one of the most recognized airplanes of all time. It is fondly remembered by those who built it and by the crews who flew it, and they were carried safely home. During World War II, it helped show that the concept of strategic bombing was effective, and that a military air force was as important as the sea and ground forces. Its legacy in bringing an end to the largest conflict in history ensures that the B-17's legendary status will continue. Sometimes I'm good at reading, others not. That's a little bit of plaque reading for you. Plaques. Got another plaque over here. Great shot of it from here too. The B-17 Flying Fortress is a 4-engine heavy strategic bomber designed by the Boeing company just prior to the outbreak of World War II. The bombers were used on multiple fronts, most famously for the 8th Air Force raids on Germany and occupied territories. Many of the 12,731 B-17s produced were built at Boeing Plant 2, less than a mile from where I'm standing right now. The men and women in the factory manufactured up to 16 Flying Fortresses a day. Production ceased in April of 1945 as the war neared its end. Boeing's president, Claire Eggebit, envisioned the B-17 as an aerial battleship. The B-17 was legendary for its ability to take punishment and bring crewmen home. Many B-17s limped home from battle with terrible damage that would have destroyed a lesser aircraft. Much of the credit goes into a young Boeing engineer named Ed Wells, who worked on the bomber's preliminary design. Wells converted Eggebit's ideas into a brawny bomber that famously brought air crews home alive. This Boeing B-17 has been carefully restored to airworthy condition. It was stateside transition trainer during World War II and was subsequently used as a chemical sprayer and a fire bomber. This Flying Fortress also appeared in movies including Thousand Plane Raid in 1968, Tor Tor Toria in 1969, and Memphis Belle in 1989. It has a 103-foot wingspan. It is 73 feet long, 19 feet high. It weighs 33,279 pounds empty, and gross weight is 53,000 pounds. It's using 4 Wright Cyclone R1820-97 Cyclone 9-cylinder radial engines with 1,200 horsepower each. Its top speed is 315 miles per hour, and it has a range of 3,500 miles. Service ceiling is 37,500 feet, and it has between 11 and 13 machine guns, and it can carry 9,600 pounds of bombs with a crew of 10.